This video is going to review the various measures of mortality for infant mortality, including our infant mortality rates and then related rates. Now keep in mind what rate you're calculating depends on the age of the infant at the time that they died. So you can see we have four measures here. We have fetal mortality, neonatal, post-neonatal, and infant mortality. Starting with our fetal mortality, since that one's listed first. Fetal mortality is looking at the number of babies who died really before they were born. So fetal death among fetuses at 20 weeks or more of gestation. Oftentimes babies who died or who were born as a stillbirth, or unfortunately who had already passed away upon delivery. So we can see in our table, this is actually set up very nicely to allow us to see the breakdown of these different measures, that our fetal mortality is going to be this first row here of 169 deaths that occurred 20 weeks plus gestation. But our denominator is going to be a little bit different than our other denominators. So our denominator for fetal mortality, and just for fetal mortality, is going to be the number of live births in that community plus this number of fetal deaths. Okay, because the number of these 169 deaths are not included in the total number of live births because they were not born alive. They died before they were born. So for our fetal mortality rate, here, we're going to have our numerator of 169 fetal deaths. We're going to divide that by the number of live births, which is up here at 19,736, plus the number of fetal deaths again, so plus that 169. And then we're going to multiply that by our constant. Now I realize I didn't put it in this example, so I'm going to go ahead and write it up here. Generally, infant mortality rates are expressed per 1,000 live births. So we're going to use that as our constant. So we'll use 1,000 as our constant here. So let's go ahead and plug this into our calculator. Again, now keep in mind you may need sets of parentheses if you're doing this in your calculator all at once. So 169 divided by parentheses 19,736 plus 169. We're going to multiply that by 1,000 to get 8.5. Okay. So practicing our interpretations, of course, we're going to have 8.5 fetal deaths per 1,000 live births. Moving on to our neonatal mortality rate. Neonatal is interested in babies that die at a very, very young age, very early in their life. So we are only interested in those deaths that occur less than 28 days of age. So this is babies that die within the, basically the first month of being alive. So from this table, we can see that we have 233 deaths that occurred among infants less than 28 days. So that's going to go as our numerator, 233. Now for the remainder of our calculations, we only use the number of live births in that time period as our denominator. So we're just going to use here this 19,736 as our denominator. We'll multiply that by our constant again to get our answer. So we have 233 divided by 19,736 times 1,000, which gives us 11.8. So again, interpretation, we had 11.8 neonatal deaths. Okay, and again, neonatal is occurred under 28 days per 1,000 live births. Post-neonatal, I'm going to move this down a little bit. Post-neonatal is interested in deaths that occurred a little bit later in an infant's life. Okay, so here we're interested in those that occur between 28 days, and 11 months. So from our table here, we can see that's 106. So we have 106 as our numerator, 19,736 as our denominator, and we still multiply by our constant. So when we plug this into our calculator, we get 5.4 with rounding. Okay, so that gives us 5.4 post-neonatal. Oh, I realized I spelled that wrong. Post-neonatal deaths. Again, we kind of put in parentheses what that means. 28 days to 11 months per 1,000 live births. Okay, last but not least, we're going to do infant mortality, which is kind of a cumulative mortality rate for babies that died before their first birthday. So here we can see that is 339. So for our infant mortality rate, we're going to have 339 divided by the total live births again, times our constant of 1,000. So as we plug this into our calculator, we get a rate of 17.2 with rounding. Okay, so that tells us again we have 17.2 infant deaths, and that is under 1 year of age per 1,000 live births. So as you're practicing your infant mortality rates, just review what age groups you include in each. Okay, so fetal is looking at the number of babies who died before they were born. Neonatal is looking at those very young, under 28 days old. Post-neonatal is looking at those a little bit older, 28 days to 11 months. And then our overall infant mortality rate is looking at those who died before their first birthday.